Najlepše pozdravljeni še v mojem imenu. Moje ime je Tilen Mandl in sem v CTK-ju zaposlen na oddelku za informacijsko tehnologijo in razvoj. Začenjamo 9. strokovno srečanje z naslovom Pogled na odprto znanost, knjižnice kot del odprte izobraževalne in raziskovalne infrastrukture. Zdaj, tale slajd, ki je trenutno za mano, tukaj se nahajata dva vprašanja, ki jih lahko, na katera lahko v bistvu vi dajete v bistvu svoje, tudi vprašanje v bistvu na to, kar se nahaja. Prvo vprašanje se nanaša, how can we define knowledge society in a context of open science and education? In te drugo vprašanje, how does EOSC function? To je mimo grede za tiste, ki ne vedo, European Open Cloud Science, as a software, as a hardware or as a standard. Preprosto greste na ta URL, sli.do, drugače lahko med tem vprašate, bodi si mene, bodi si kolega Mitjo tukaj v prvi vrsti, pa vam lahko pomaga. Koda je pa F1108. Skratka, v prvem delu boste spoznali pomen sodelovanja na vseh ravneh v izobraževalnem in raziskovalnem procesu. Prav odprta znanost podpira tovrstne koncepte, saj uvaja številne nove, do sedaj manj znane paradigme, kot so na primer sodobnejša načela ocenjevanja znanstvenega dela, odprt dostop do raziskovalnih podatkov, znanost za državljane, oziroma predvsej bolj znan izraz citizen science, v slovenščini še nekako nimamo nekega ustreznega izraza za to, in druge. Sodelovanje pri izobraževalnem in raziskovalnem delu ter pri zagotavljanju odprtih javnih infrastruktur zagotavlja, da bo skupnost lahko izkoristila vse svoje potenciale za razvoj. Mene zelo veseli, da vam lahko predstavim znana imena na tem področju. Prvi na seznamu je dr. Paul Iris, ki ga nažalost danes ni tu, tako da si bomo njegove predavanje z naslovom Education as a Pillar of Open Science ogledali v video obliki.
Hello, my name is Paul Iris. I'm Pro-Vice Provost here in UCL, University College London, and I'm very pleased to be here to talk about various aspects of open science and the way that my university, UCL, is embracing these concepts and delivering change based on the principles that open science preaches. And today I'm going to be talking about education as a pillar of open science. This is what I'm going to be talking about in the next 30 minutes or so. I'm going to look at all the 8 pillars of open science as defined by the European Commission and highlight the important role that funders so far have placed in delivering open science change and open science practice in universities. Then I'm going to home in on the concept of education and particularly UCL's definition of research-based education, which is something very new for research-led universities in the UK and is delivering fruit in terms of how open science can help support that. I want to talk about our open education roadmap, the plans that we put in place to deliver open educational infrastructure and practice across the university, and then look particularly at the role of UCL Press, the UK's first fully open access university press, to see what it can do. Finally, I look at a number of infrastructures that we put in place, many of which are in pilot mode, to test some of the concepts we've identified in the roadmap, to show how we can deliver open education in practice as well as in principle. And then at the end of the talk, deliver some conclusions about where I think we are and what we need to do going forward. So let's start with the first of these topics, which is looking at the 8 pillars of open science as defined by the European Commission. these are the 8 pillars, and as you can see as you look down the list, education isn't actually mentioned as one of the themes which the Commission in Brussels has pinpointed as a target for open science practice. In UCL, we think that's wrong, that's a mistake. And so in the skills pillar here, the number 4 on the list that you see on the screen, we add education and skills together as a common approach to delivering new ways of teaching and learning across the university. So in this aspect, we're diverging a little from the Commission's definition because we want to broaden it, because it doesn't embrace all the work that a university does with its students and with its researchers. If you wanted a general roadmap, a kind of overview of those 8 pillars, or 8.5 pillars as we've redefined them with adding education to the skills pillar, where should you look? What is a roadmap that tells you what you need to be doing in all those 8 areas if you want to deliver open science practice? Well, LERU, the League of European Research Universities, has developed a roadmap. I have to be honest, I chaired the working group which produced the roadmap, and here on the screen you can see the URL where you can find it as an open access report on the LERU website. All 23 rectors in LERU, in the League, signed off the roadmap and said this is what they wanted to do and what they wanted to introduce in their universities at their own time and at their own pace, building on their own experiences and their own pockets of excellence in their own universities. So it isn't a one-size-fits-all approach. It's a number of options, 41 recommendations actually, from which universities can choose as they introduce open science practices across the institution. In many of the areas of open science as currently developed, the research funder has played a really pivotal role. If you receive research funding from an external funder, you would expect conditions attached to the grant. And many research funders, especially in Europe, attach a really quite stringent open access conditions to the outputs that are being produced as a result of the funding which they're granting to individual researchers and to research groups. And Plan S from Science Europe is the latest attempt to deliver a really meaningful and actually quite radical change in the way people undertake research and how they can disseminate those outputs by making very strict regulations about publication, where you can publish, and the need for the output to be available as an open access output. Plan S gives universities a number of challenges, some positive gains, but some challenges as well, and I've listed them here on the slide, which you can see on the screen now. In negotiation with universities and university bodies, they've lengthened the time frame for introducing the plan, and they've changed their view of green open access repositories to be a much more positive view and to give green open access outputs a much more visible place in the publication landscape. Nonetheless, there are challenges for research. The plan calls for transformative journal agreements with commercial publishers, and as someone who has led the UK negotiations for subscription content for the UK higher education community, I know just how difficult and challenging it is for all parties in that negotiation to reach an agreement. And transformative deals really are quite radical in their open access requirements, and that represents a real challenge. Perhaps the biggest challenge, though, is the fact that Plan S only covers 5% of global research output. It isn't yet a global movement. The supporters of Plan S clearly want it to be a global movement, but at the moment there aren't enough funders signed up to the plan to make it realistic at a global level. But fundamental for us today is the realization that while research funders have been really instrumental in changing the publishing landscape for research outputs, that doesn't help us with education, because Plan S doesn't cover primarily educational outputs. It covers research outputs. So research funders have a role to play here. But for education, research funders are not going to be the driving force, and it really is up to the individual university or coalition of universities, if you're working in a grouping, to deliver that change yourself. And that makes open education very different from open research in the way that universities have to approach it. So let's move on to the concept of education, and particularly research-based education as we define it here in UCL, because that sets the landscape for our open educational practice that we're beginning to shape and to deliver in infrastructure and skills training. If you were to define research-based education, which is the concept that UCL has embraced, you could represent it by this diagram here on the screen, 6 petals of a flower with different themes delivering a true educational experience for all our students. And if you were to look at these 6 petals here on the flower, which of these would lend themselves to open science practice? Well, in UCL, we're concentrating on number 3 and number 5. So number 3 is students making connection across subjects and out to the world. And if all your outputs are open access, it makes those connections so much easier to deliver, because there are no barriers between you and material that you want to use. And number 5, students learn to produce outputs and assignments directed at an audience. Well, that audience could be a defined audience in the university, it could be a wider subject-based audience, or it could be the whole world. If you want to share your educational outputs and training materials with as wide a population as possible, open access is clearly the way to do it. So for UCL, thinking and believing that research underpins all our educational activity and the educational experience in UCL is one grounded in our research practice and in our research findings, there are clear hooks on which to base open science practice in the educational landscape going forward. To deliver open education, we commissioned a scoping study to identify what we needed to do to move from a position where there was no real open educational activity to one where open education would become, in time, the norm rather than the exception. So in 2016, we undertook this scoping study with an external consultant acting for us to deliver a set of findings and recommendations. And this is what he said, that across the university, he found that open educational resources were already being produced, but in little silos, with no join-up across the whole university as to how these were shared, stored, curated, or disseminated. When talking to our academic staff, he found that their understanding of what open education meant was very poor, which is why we undertook the piece of work to deliver open education as part of our research-based educational practice, to root it in the key concepts that we think underpin education here in UCL, of which open science is clearly a part. The consultant identified a lack of infrastructures or isolated infrastructures that weren't talking to each other, technical infrastructures, communities of practice that were isolated and not part of an organic whole. And clearly that needed to change. There needed to be a strategic policy which brought all these silos of activity together, that identified all the good practice and produced one coherent offering for open education across the university. And the report noticed specifically that there was no central open educational resources repository where the outputs could be stored and made available through one front end for anyone in the world to access them and use them. The consultant did notice and look at the work of UCL Press as an open access publisher and thought that the press could help in the transformation of the landscape into a coherent basis for open educational practice across the institution. From that investigation, we produced a roadmap showing between 2015 and 2020 how we were going to move from a position where open education was the exception to where in 2020 and beyond it was fully integrated into our educational activity and could in theory become the norm if it had academic acceptance from our academic colleagues. Here we are in 2019 at stage 3 of this roadmap. We have established, I'll come on and talk about the open educational resources repository that we've established. It still is in pilot mode, and we're working with academic departments, undertaking a lot of advocacy to academic colleagues to get them to store their educational outputs, the materials they use for teaching and learning, which they want to share and are happy to share with the wider community. The Open Education Resources Repository is an obvious place where their teaching materials can sit and where the outputs of students' project work undertaken as part of their taught course degrees. The repository is an obvious place for that as well. So we're delivering the infrastructure and the advocacy around engagement with that repository to try to change the culture in UCL, to make open education the norm rather than the exception. So one of the things the consultant identified when he was looking at the baseline for our open educational work was UCL Press. So let me say a little bit about the press, of which we're very, very proud, of course, because it is the UK's first fully open access university press that's been developed. And when I talked to academic colleagues, because it was me who established and founded the press, we tried to identify what the benefits of having an open access university press would be. There are many examples of university presses in the UK. Many fine universities have well-established university presses, but UCL's is the first to be fully open access. And I wanted open access to be the theme of the press, rather than reinvent a traditional press in a UCL context. I wanted to do something new and something challenging, because one of our mottos is disruptive change. We like disruptive change here in UCL, and I thought that having an OA press would be disruptive and would change the way that people publish and the way people consume and read and have access to published outputs. So here on the screen you see some of the benefits that we identified when we were trying to write a business case for establishing the press. All these 9 benefits were benefits that academic colleagues identified as I talked to them about what the press could do and how it might fit in with their work. And the one that was consistently cited by academics when I talked about benefits and challenges was this one in the middle, which I've highlighted in gold. And that was global impact, the global impact that UCL Press, as a fully open access press, would have in raising visibility for the university and sharing our knowledge and our wisdom contained in our educational outputs and educational materials with as wide a community as possible. Our strapline is UCL, London's global university. And open access publishing absolutely delivers on that agenda, because all the outputs that the press can create with our academic colleagues are aimed at a global audience, because there are no barriers to accessing them. They are fully open access once they're made available through press publishing. And here is the result. The press was started in 2015. Now in 2019, we've published just over 100 books. And they've had the incredible number of 2 million downloads in 232 countries and territories across the world. And you can see on the heat map here in the center of the slide the various download figures in terms of intensity of download in different geographical areas. Lots of downloads in North America and in Europe, but also in countries like India and China. These are growing economies, and it's really important to us and to the institution that we make contact with these countries through our educational outputs and through our research. So UCL Press is certainly delivering on that global mission. These are the most downloaded books that we've published. I took this snapshot on the 1st of September this year, and these are the top 5 items that we have produced. And you'll see there number 5 on the right-hand side of the screen, because while numbers 1 to 4 are research monographs, and indeed the first one, How the World Changed Social Media, is funded from a European Research Council grant, so it absolutely is a research output. But number 5 here on the right-hand side, the Handbook of Plastic and Reconstructive Surgery, is actually a teaching material, because it comes from the Master's Talk course at the Royal Free campus, one of our teaching hospitals, where we put our medical students on clinical placement. And the textbook is the result of the work done on the Master's course in burns and plastic surgery. And the author, or the lead author, Deepak Kalaskar, wanted to publish it as an open access output because he wanted the learning from the master's course to be available all over the world in as free a form as possible, and open access was obviously the way to go. And this textbook, because in fact it is a textbook, has had just under 70,000 downloads since it was published in August 2016. And for those who want to buy print, we do sell print. It isn't the main form of output. The main form of output is a freely available open access textbook. But if you want to buy a print copy, you can do. And this book has had 200 print sales as well. There's 70,000 free downloads from all over the world. So textbooks really are a major source of activity for open educational resources, and we are going to try and develop our own textbook platform in the press to mirror the fantastic work the press has already done in delivering research outputs, as we saw on the previous slide. For the UK alone, it's estimated that the amount of money spent on purchasing print textbooks is something like £200 million every year. And what UCL wants to do is to try to divert some of that money, hopefully all of that money, away from commercial textbooks to open access textbook publishing, because the benefits of making material available in open access are demonstrably greater than the current commercial model. The current commercial model is huge. The US textbook industry, if you include schools as well as universities, is a staggering $14 billion, worth $14 billion per year. Open access clearly is the way forward because in a print environment, it's physically impossible for a university library to buy enough copies of print textbooks for every student on the course. There isn't enough money in the budget, and there isn't enough space on the shelves to house all the copies you'd need to house. So what you have to do, what libraries have to do, is actually to ration access to a limited number of copies which the library holds in order to make sure that everyone has a fair chance of reading the text. And that's a poor student experience, in my view, especially if you're charging, as we in the UK do charge, significant tuition fees. So in an open access environment, the item is available 24/7 to anyone, anywhere in the world, with access to an internet connection. And that seems to me a much better student experience and a better return on your investment for investing in infrastructure than limiting access to a print copy because that's the only way you can make it available. So UCL believes that there is a real future for open access textbook publishing to replace the current commercial model. This is our textbook program in UCL Press. Up to August 2020, we commissioned 10 or 12 textbooks from UCL authors. These are the titles that came through the review system, and they're slotted into our annual publication schedule for the press. And we hope that this will act as the foundation for a really vibrant textbook market and set of activities going forward. Once people get used to the idea that open access textbooks are good for the academic because they give the academic greater visibility for what they've written, and good for the student because there is no barrier to accessing the material that the textbook contains. It's freely available all the time from anywhere in the world where the student happens to be. So part of the roadmap that we commissioned as a result of the consultants' work was to look at infrastructures, and we're in the position now in UCL where we're setting up a number of infrastructures, some newly born, some still in pilot mode, to test all aspects of open educational practice to see which work and which don't. So at the moment we're in a position where we're saying, let 1,000 flowers bloom and we'll see what the results look like. So let me very briefly run through some of the infrastructures, many of which I've mentioned in my talk so far. I talked about the future of the textbook as being an open access product, and we are developing a platform called the book as open online content. And this is the result of an AHRC-funded project with the British Library where we looked at digital publishing and open access textbook publishing. And we believe that the book platform that we've developed can act as the infrastructure in UCL to deliver textbooks on a really big stage in terms of the numbers we can produce and the audiences which they can reach, because the book is tailor-made to reflect the way that people use textbooks and want to use the information that those textbooks contain. I've talked about our open educational resources repository. We have launched this repository. It is in pilot mode. OpenEd at UCL is the pilot repository, and we are beginning to fill it with content. Textbooks from UCL Press will be able to go in there, as will exemplar theses, project work from taught course students in their final year. That's absolutely the type of material we would expect students to want to put and share through the Open Educational Resources repository. So we're beginning to advocate the use of the repository to all the academic departments in UCL to try to build up the content now that the pilot has been launched. These are some download figures and also some upload figures for material in the Open Educational Resources repository. You'll see that the figures start off quite low, so the bars on the graph are the number of uploads of content into the repository by month. And then the dark blue line is the number of downloads that material is receiving from users from all over the world. It is still in pilot mode. The figures are relatively small, but we're hoping to grow them through publishing more, through making more available, and undertaking advocacy to our academic departments to show them the benefits of making their material available in open access form. We also use MOOC platforms to deliver open educational resources and training programs. And to date, certainly to May 2019, we had delivered 10 courses via a MOOC platform, which is offered by a company called FutureLearn. And there are a variety of motivations why academic colleagues chose the FutureLearn as their mechanism for delivery. It is open access. It does offer a means of openly and accessibly disseminating outputs to a global audience. And you see there from the number of learners who've signed up to the platforms, 160,000 learner sign-ups, that it is very successful in terms of attracting attention and engagement with this as a way of disseminating UCL's wisdom and knowledge in the educational landscape across a global audience. We have a maximum of 164 countries on any one course, or represented on any one course, with 120 countries being represented on average. So the results in the FutureLearn space are very similar to the results we're seeing in UCL Press space in terms of this being a preferred way and a very attractive way of engaging with users and with delivering visibility for UCL's educational activity as a result. And if required, the materials that FutureLearn is using can also be housed within the Open Educational Resources repository as a long-term digitally curated archive of the material that's being produced. Because we believe in research-based education, we also want to use not only publications, maybe research monographs if you're a historian, which would act as your textbook, or chapters of those would act as a textbook approach to basic concepts in history, but also research data, the data on which the findings in a research monograph or indeed a textbook are based. So open education embraces not simply published outputs or educational outputs, but also research data as well. That's the true meaning of research-based education. And here you can see from the Horizon 2020 online manual a typical workflow for a researcher. So the researcher here is on the left-hand side of the screen undertaking research activity and producing a number of outputs. The top two, the gold open access and green open access, refer to publications. So these could be born OA publications, for example, through UCL Press, if it's a gold open access output, or a green open access output could be an article or a piece of text or a set of statistics in an open access repository in UCL Discovery, if it's the UCL repository. But boxes 3 and 4, the dark green and the red ones, are really about new forms of output, and that is research data, which is the new currency in the open science world, because if you make everything open and you share everything, you can share not just the findings and conclusions, that is, the publication, the textbook or the research monograph. You can also share the data on which those findings are based and try and validate whether you can replicate the findings by looking at the data on which the conclusions are based. If you want to do that, you need to have the infrastructure in which to store the research data as well as the publication. And that's what we've done in UCL with our research data repository. It's our open access research data repository, which we launched in June this year, which will underpin research-based education, just as the publication or the textbook or the research monograph underpins research-based education as well. Using the research data, typically as a third-year undergraduate or a master's student, you can start to validate other people's findings by examining the data they've created and finding out, trying to discover for yourself, using research methods, whether the findings in the publication are actually borne out by the data that the researcher or the research group has produced. So in an open educational environment, research data is potentially just as important as the publication, the textbook, or indeed the research monograph. So finally, where has that led us in UCL in terms of embracing open educational approaches, open educational principles, and putting those into practice? We've undertaken a survey of everything that's happening in UCL, and we've drawn the roadmap, which is guiding us up to 2020 and how we implement open education principles and gear them to the concept of research-based education, which lies at the foundation of our educational activity here in UCL. And we built a number of infrastructures to help deliver open education practice. In the spirit of letting 1,000 flowers bloom, we're trying a number of approaches to see which works and maybe which doesn't as we go forward. So repositories like the Open Educational Resources Repository, the Research Data Repository, open access textbooks through UCL Press, and MOOC approaches through FutureLearn are all attempts to look at open dissemination, open production, and sharing of UCL's educational outputs in order to deliver a truly enhanced educational experience, not only for our students, but also to share those insights and that knowledge with anyone in the world who wants to use or sign up for our educational activities. So we conclude that open science is good for the researcher, but it is also good for education. Open access publishing and dissemination can drive change, and linked to our concept of research-based education, we believe that it is beginning to deliver the change that we want to see happen here in UCL. We see open science as an opportunity and not a threat, and open education is just one way of delivering on open science principles. So if you have been, thank you for listening. Thank you for sharing this presentation with as many of your colleagues as possible as you go forward in your own activity in delivering open science practice in your university or in your institute. And I'd look forward to hearing from you if there are points you want to make or questions that you want to raise as a result of what I've been talking about today. Thank you.
Okay, takole, naslednja predavateljica je gospa Kristina Hormija-Putanen, ki bo odvodila svoje digitalno predavanje preko Skypa z naslovom International Collaboration Boosting Open Science.
Hello.
Hi.
Okay, and now I need to share the screen. Pitääkö mun avata tää nyt ensin? Äsken ne sanoi, että tää pitäisi olla tuolla.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay, it's perfect.
The floor is yours.
Okay, now there's some echo on my side.
It's okay on our side.
Okay, now I speak. Yes, now it's better. No, it's not. No, it's echoing. It's difficult for me. Mitähän tässä voisi tehdä? Se pyörii.
Okay, can you put on the it's better now?
It's when I'm speaking, so my voice is going around. Should I do something, or should you do, or how shall we proceed?
Can you perhaps if I mute here, can you try now?
Okay, I'm speaking now. Now it's better. If you can hear me, then it's good.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay, we can start. Okay, kiitos. And the audience is ready for me? Yes?
Yeah, we are ready.
Okay. So, good morning everyone. This is Kristiina Hormia-Poutanen from Helsinki calling. I would have liked to be there, but as you possibly know, my flight was cancelled. Lufthansa is on strike, and that's why I couldn't join you this morning. When I'm looking out from the window in Helsinki, it's very grey. We have a little bit of snow, so I saw people throwing snowballs. So I presume the weather is a bit different in Ljubljana at the moment. Okay, so I am Kristiina from the National Library of Finland. I'm also the former president of LIBE, member of the Open Science Policy Platform, and also member of the Digital Cultural Heritage Expert Group, which is similar kind of a group than the Open Science Policy Platform, and I'm also at DORA Advisory Board. Some words first about my expertise here in Finland. I am the service director at the National Library, and my responsibilities are the national infrastructure services for libraries, archives, museums, and also to some other public organizations. So we develop, for example, licensing. So we want to foster open science, open access. We develop discovery services, really wanting to promote access to open content and also other types of content. We develop library systems, institutional repositories, so many different services, and we have a very large network here in the country. So my work at national level sort of helps me very much with the international tasks and vice versa. So these all sort of support each other, and I have been very, very happy in having the possibilities also to be active at international forum. Before I forget, I'd like to congratulate the Central Technical Library. I understand that you are celebrating the 70-year anniversary, so this is quite a long way. You have been developing the services So my sincere congratulations for you. Let me see how I can now move on with my presentation. It's not moving. How could I get the next slide? If I do it this way, is it okay for you if I do it this way? Otherwise it's not moving. Okay, I just continue. First of all, here I have a description of what open science is. This is by the Open Science Policy Platform, part of our integrated advice done in 2018. And the important message in this slide is that open science is collaborative, transparent, and reproducible. And the outputs are publicly available. I think this is quite a nice description on our challenges and our goals regarding open science. So my agenda today is here. So I will tell you a bit about the Open Science Policy Platform, some words about our outcomes of the platform, then what we are doing in Finland regarding open science, regarding national licensing, then some words about the role of libraries and conclusions. First, I start with the Open Science Policy Platform. There was quite some history behind the formation of the platform. You all remember, I believe, the public consultation in 2014. At that time, it was called Science 2.0. Science in Transition, but based on the consultation after that, we have called this approach open science. And as you see, there has been quite a systematic progress. The Open Science Policy Platform was formed in 2016, and now we are on our second mandate, which will come to its end in May next year. So the mandate of the Open Science Policy Platform during both of its mandates is to advise the Commission, and especially during the second mandate, our task is to practically implement the open science policy agenda and really foster open science in practical terms. Also to improve the quality and impact of European science, identify related stakeholders. We have 25 high-level representatives of the European open science stakeholders forming the platform. And as I mentioned, our term is until May 2020. The priorities of Open Science Policy Platform are listed here. So we have 8 priority areas. The Commission also has set up a couple of high-level expert groups which have published their recommendations. And 2 of the very, very important high-level expert group reports are those related to EOSC and also related to FAIR. We also are waiting to get the high-level expert report on indicators and citizen science published. So also Open Science Policy Platform produces recommendations, and the optimal way we are working is really to rely on our recommendations on the high-level expert reports. So to mention something about the priority areas, I would say that perhaps the biggest issue which still is open is related to rewards and metrics. So everybody would like to see some new ways to measure open science, to measure the impact and to change the reward system. And this is under progress, but we don't have anything concrete yet. And I'm sure all stakeholders desperately would need to see something in this area. But we'll have to wait still. Open Science Policy Platform published its recommendations in spring 2018, and I still think the recommendations are very much valid, so I'd recommend you to have a look on those recommendations. You can see the link at the bottom of this slide, and this slide is to show how we formulated the recommendations. So we are using icons to represent stakeholders. So we have provided recommendations related to the 8 priority areas, and we are using these icons. We inform sort of which stakeholders should be active in fulfilling those recommendations. This is an example of open scholarly publishing, and you see that our recommendation in 2018 was to proceed with immediate open access and full text and data mining rights. And this is very, very strongly on our agenda still at the moment, as you well know. Some of the outcomes, especially of our second mandate, are listed here, but we are still working on this. So we will publish the final outcome in around April next spring. But here you have some taste of our recommendations. We still believe that and think that the recommendations of 2018, they are strongly valid. So this is one strong outcome of this platform. And also all the events which have been organized by different Open Science Policy Platform members. So we have the universities, we have the research infrastructures, we have the IT developers and libraries. I'm the only one representing libraries. So all these stakeholders, they have been organizing events for their own stakeholder groups, and then also horizontally to various stakeholders. And these workshops and conferences and seminars, they have really helped in raising awareness of open science and also get people active in implementing open science practices in different fields. Many of Open Science Policy Platform members have been giving lectures at this kind of workshops you are having today in Ljubljana. And that's why we discussed last time we had our meeting that this focus on open science workshops also sort of form part of the outreach activities of the policy platform as well. In addition to these workshops, we have had EU presidency meetings in the Netherlands, Estonia, Romania and Finland, and we have had our Open Science Policy Platform meetings there, and also have had the possibility to present some of our ideas. As I'm the former president of LIBER, so of course Open Science has been very strongly on the agenda of LIBER conferences, and it was an honor for LIBER that the French Open Science Plan was published at LIBER annual conference in Lille. So it was the Minister of Education and Research in France who published the Open Science Plan. Of course, at the RDA meetings and other conferences, events and workshops. So as I said, we will publish the final outcome next year, but this is some ideas we have when working on the outcomes. Okay, then I'm moving to open science in Finland. Also in Finland, we have quite a long history related to developing open science infrastructures and practices. The first program was between 2010 and 2013, and it was about analyzing and finding out what kind of scientific outputs there are in the country and in which formats and how we need to handle these kind of outputs. The next phase was the Open Science and Research Initiative, which lasted between 2014 and 2017. The vision of this initiative was open research leads to surprising discoveries and creative insights. The initiative was very much about concerning publications, data and methods, and also it was found out that the culture within research organizations would need to change really to be able to implement open science. So these two initiatives, which lasted altogether 8 years, they were coordinated by the Ministry of Education and Culture. And after these two initiatives, now the ministry has informed that research institutions themselves need to take responsibility over open science development and implementation. And that's why the Finnish University Rectors Council, they published their action plan in 2018, sort of saying what kind of activities the university rectors see are most important in this respect. And also, as the consequence of the decision at the ministry, national coordination of open science in Finland was organized, and the mandate was given to the Federation of the Finnish Learned Societies. So they are not part of any research institution, and that's why it was considered that they are suitable for taking this kind of responsibility. They are independent from the Ministry of Education, they are independent from research organizations. And the method they have chosen is very collaborative, so all research organizations have been invited to participate their work. So the national coordination of open science the mandate has been given to the Federation of Learned Societies, and they have formed different kind of working groups and strategy groups, and you can see here a list of national policy papers which will be published either this year or in the coming years. There will be an open science declaration. I would say it's early next year. It looks at the moment like that. Then there will be national open access guidelines, and these for sure will be published this year. There will be research evaluation guidelines, fair data guidelines, and open education guidelines. So these have been the main focus areas of the national coordination in Finland. I have had the privilege also to be involved in this work, and I see that I'm sure it will have quite a strong impact in Finland and hope also internationally. All these papers will be translated into English and of course in Swedish, which is our second language. So the aim is really to provide this kind of national policy papers and get signatures from research organizations that they will start implementing these guidelines. This has been one task, and other tasks of the national coordination is really to improve collaboration and synergy, to get more dialogue. And also have dialogue with the research funding organizations. I mentioned that the University Rectors Council, they also drafted their action plan. And this is in a nutshell what they say it is important. The rectors said that it is really necessary to have a coordinating body in Finland to coordinate open science activities across research organizations and other stakeholders. They also focus on the culture of openness. There needs to be changes within research organizations so that researchers, teachers, students, decision makers, they really foster the culture of openness. Fair research data is one priority, and open publication is another. And of course, we all need to have new measures to measure the progress in different fields of open science. In Finland, as you might know, we also are lucky that we have open science infrastructures at national level. These have been developed over the years, over perhaps last 10 years. And here is a draft or an image of what kind of infrastructures we have. Quite many of these are developed and maintained by the IT Science of Research, CSC, which you might know, but there are also other institutions which are developing and maintaining these infrastructures. I'd like to mention the FINELIP, so it's the service by the National Library of Finland. So this is about national licensing and now about transformative agreements. We also have our discovery portal Finna, which is also shown in the figure, and also our national ontology service Pinto, which is also on the figure. But if you'd like to remember something, my main message is that we have quite many research infrastructures already in Finland, and now the key issue is how to integrate these infrastructures to European level infrastructures so that the workflows would be very good for the research. And as part of the open science coordination and open science activities in Finland, we organized open science coordination meeting last month here in Finland, in Helsinki and in Espoo. The representatives from the European member states and open science policy platform and people from the EOSC governing board were invited to this open science coordination meeting. We had some 80 participants in this meeting, and the outcome of the meeting was that the network of European open science coordinators were formed, and now it looks like that the Commission will nominate a Council of European Open Science Coordinations, which would have about the same role as the Open Science Policy Platform has currently. So in Finland, we are really happy that this happened. So this was our aim for the meeting, and now it was really good timing, as we have also some other countries which have organized already open science coordination, for example, Netherlands and France, and in Ireland also something is happening. But in many countries, there is strong interest. So at our meeting in Helsinki, we had 21 countries present, and all of them seem to be really interested in the open science coordination. Okay, and now I move to national licensing. I have spent quite a lot of my time already, but to make it short, I'm sure that you all are very well aware of the plan Plan S. So I don't go into details in this. I know that also Slovenia was one of the first signatories of Plan S, as was also Finland. So it was very good to notice this. But now my point here is sort of how Plan S and our national guidelines support our licensing. And the Finnish Rectors' Council, they have endorsed the negotiation goals of our national licensing unit, Fineli. And our main goals here are affordable price and immediate open access. And our rectors support this. And what is also good for us is that rectors want to get more involved in the discussions and decision-making regarding the contract. So we will get members from the UNIFI joining our steering committee. And we have to remember that when we negotiate the transformative deals, the only really strong word to publishers is that we have the right to cancel contracts. This is really, in the end, this is the only very, very strong sentence we can have, a strong message we can have to publishers. And as you see, our rectors support us, and they understand that we have to be prepared to cancel deals if we don't reach our goals. Okay, so if we need to cancel our deals, of course we need to give our researchers support in finding ways to content. And our Finelip service unit, they have created a web page where they show what kind of alternative access routes there are for content. And of course, we need to communicate sort of the legal ways to access content. We know that researchers might use some other channels, but of course we are fostering those good channels. And of course one good channel is the scientific communication between researchers. So the researchers can share content between themselves. So how far have we gone with our transformative agreements? We have 2 agreements where we have 100% full immediate open access. So they are Springer and Royal Chemical Society. We have negotiations going on with Wiley and Sage, and they kind of look positive. So that's why they are mentioned here. And we have also some other negotiations going on where we hope to see this 100% open access goal happening. We have many deals where we have partial open access publishing rights, for example, ACS. And then in some deals we have discounted APCs, for example, Elsevier. We have no deal for this year with Taylor and Francis, and we are just now negotiating with them. And at this point, it does not look very, very good, but we don't know the end result yet. Now it seems that several publishers, they don't want to give perpetual access to content, and this is one of our concerns, that we want to guarantee that sustainable access to content is possible. And as a summary to mention, Plan S gives strong support to our negotiations. In this slide, you can see how many articles have been published in open access in 2018. And in the next one, you see how many articles have been published in 2018 via different publisher routes. And of course, those where we have 100% open access possibility, they are leading. The figures for this year will look better, but of course now we are still in November, so we don't have the figures for this year yet. So at the end, some words about LIBER. LIBER is the Network of European Research Libraries. It was founded in 1971. And actually now it covers about 500 libraries in 40 countries. And I checked how many libraries we have in Slovenia at the moment, and you can see the list of Slovenian libraries at LIBER. This is the strategy of LIBER and how we see the research landscape in 2022, which is the end year of the current strategy. And as you can see, we are focusing very strongly open science. Science here, different sort of angles of open science. Open access, fair data, transparency, research infrastructures, and digital information, which is tomorrow's cultural heritage. In addition to our strategy, we'd like to mention Open Science Roadmap, which was published in 2018 as well. You might get some good ideas from the roadmap. If you are not members of LIBER, I strongly advise you to join. LIBER can support libraries in many ways, and here you can see some forms of support we give to LIBER organizations. At the Open Science Roadmap, we listed 3 key principles which we understand are very important in implementing open science. And these 3 key principles are transparency, sustainability, and collaboration. And I'd guess most of you can agree on these. Also in the roadmap there are recommendations, 30 recommendations, and here I have listed some, perhaps 8. I don't go into detail in this, but you can get the feeling, so what kind of recommendations we have there. And as said, you can find the roadmap on web, and also I provided you the link so you can study these in more detail. And this is my conclusion. So all stakeholders have to be active to make open science happen. This is about collaboration. Thank you very much. I'm happy to...
So
thank you.
Thank you, Christina, for the presentation. If we will have any question for you, we will send it to you.
Okay.
Okay.
Will you send it in email or you say it?
Via Slido. We will send you any digital way possible. Yeah.
Shall I open my email now?
Yeah, no, we will send the questions later through the email.
Okay, yes.
Okay, take care. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye. Yes, thank you.
Ok, ker imamo že akademskih 30 plus minut, bomo šli kar naprej. Zdaj naslednji predavatelj je dr. Tiberius Ignat. Njegovo predavanje nosi naslov Sea Change in Research, Collaboration Next to Competition.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming here and for being here. Thank you for inviting. We'd like to say thank you for the co-organizers, the CTK and Also, congratulations for your celebration. And thank you for listening so far. I know we are a bit late, so that's why I'll try to compress a bit my presentation. If you don't mind, I will run through some of my slides, not all of them. So the presentation today is about a sea change in research, which I have been invited to deliver today as a follow-up of a workshop that we had in Geneva this summer. And thank you for inviting me. I hope you will find it interesting. So please do use the Slido code to interact with me, to pose your questions, and also to have this and collect these questions over the day for the panel in the end of today. First of all, I'd like to show you two papers that came up last year in The Guardian, speaking about the competition in research. One of these papers is an anonymous paper, and The Guardian is not that kind of tabloid that it's publishing any kind of paper. They are deeply looking to see what they want to report. They have a very strong section in science and academic life. So they decided to publish this anonymous paper, which is speaking about the competition, if it's driving really the innovation or is damaging research. I won't get through the details, being time concerned, but the author is claiming that they are pushed to be first. They are pushed to embed a culture in which they need researchers to be first in all fields, and they must to keep secret their work. Doing this can make or break their career, or decide a grand outcome. He's also saluting in his paper Wellcome Trust, which is decided to make their competition open and to publish their competitions and the applications to their competition, regardless if it's successful or not. Who knows, maybe a rejected proposal could be embraced by a colleague. I highly recommend you to read this article to understand the difference and the spirit of competing or collaborating in research. The link, you will have this presentation, the link is on this slide. The second paper, it's in an interview with a very successful author and consultant, Margaret Hefferman. And her thesis is that students compete for places and grades. Academics compete for jobs, publication spaces, and fundings. Everyone is being ranked everywhere, and this is toxic for research. This is her thesis. I don't say that I agree with all of her theses, but some of them look to me quite accurate. Leaders, in her opinion, are determined to improve them, often unwittingly absorbing external set of values that measure not their definition of success, but someone else's definition of success. And the more existential question that leaders at universities and research organizations should pose to themselves is whether they need to ponder if the universities are educational and research machines or communities. Again, I warmly invite you to read this paper. You don't need to agree with everything, but it could raise ideas and considerations regarding competition in research. First of all, we need to understand the concept of competition, I think. Running competitions is just one way, among several others, to measure the success if you are a competitor, or to make achievements, to create deliveries if you are an organizer, in our case, a funder. The question is, running competition is only and maybe the right meaning of tackling the grand challenges on our life. Like famine, like turning the wave of pollution, like combating diseases and all other grand challenges. Is competition the right and the only meaning of achieving results in these fields? My answer is no. We need something else to bring in the equation. We need collaboration. And I invite you to think which level should play collaboration in regards to competition and the importance in the economy of research. I know that research is running on a different economy than the normal one. It's the reputation economy. So how do we get reputation for our collaboration spirit? When you compete, you measure your success by someone else's definition of it. When you collaborate, you do something more. You achieve meaningful and, most importantly, transformative results, not all sort of results. The results that are able to transform. Competition, in my opinion, is good as long as it is constructive, and you can achieve that by collaborating in the same time at eye level with competition. So this presentation is a follow-up of a workshop that I was invited to organize at CERN University of Geneva workshop, which happens every second year. And that workshop was trying to find stepping stones of bringing up collaboration at the eye level, as I said again, of competition. We had 8 countries representative with 15 participants. Miro was one of the participants, and thank you very much for being there. And one of the things that we established there is that open science is not bulletproofed against all sort of hazards. I will speed up a bit, but I think it's good to consider if this, what we reach as not conclusions, but as a thesis, are good and interesting maybe for you to explore. One of these hazards of open science is the failure itself of the movement, not being able to attract the biggest talents and to nurture diverse communities. And this is one of the biggest hazards. If open science is failing in that way, it's very hard to believe that it will return. A second one is to become an exclusive movement of public research and to put yet another barrier with the rest of society, saying that this is a movement that we are doing here in academic institutions. Stay away if you are not an academic institution. To associate open with ignore, especially when it comes to costs, and to think that open science could be delivered with no cost, or ignoring those. And lastly, to build blocks of net beneficiaries that rarely move to contributors. Open science is delivered by contributing to the movement, not expecting others to contribute, and you just, not you, but others just to be the beneficiaries of others' work. Having that in mind, we were thinking to a sea change, and this is how the sea change, in my opinion, is looking like. The competition today is about being the first in everything, being the first that promote new ideas, that the one that is winning the calls for funding, to be the first that discover, the first that communicate in any way, to obtain a position in your academic tenure, to publish more, to fight for publishing spaces, to get more attention, see citations, to reach bigger index because everybody is measured by someone, and in the end, you compete to win something. That's fine, but it's better if you bring something next to this competition, and that's collaboration. When you will get access to more resources, shared infrastructure, you will be efficient and responsible in the use of these resources. You will attract and build collective intelligence. You will activate micro-expertise groups that might not exist next to you immediately. Save time and reuse your findings. Communicate more efficiently. Disseminate and share. In the end, collaboration is not about winning, it's about gaining. We had a number of conclusions in our workshop. I really regret there is not enough time to have them all. I don't like very textual slides, rich textual slides. But some of these conclusions is that, for example, collaboration is a sign of research integrity and should be built in institutions and careers. Second is that we need to measure, if we insist to measure things, we need to measure the success of funders. If you look to the stakeholders of research, the funders are the only ones that are not measured in any sense. And don't tell me that they are measured by being elected politically. Again, that's not a measurement. The result of their decision to invest in direction A or B should be measured. Project competitions have the potential of leaving behind great ideas that simply don't fit in calls for projects, and that's one way of delivering competition. Continue to launch project competition, but find complementary routes to funding great research ambitions, not to have people chopping down and twisting their biggest idea just to fit in a call for projects. Another set of conclusions is that we need a DORA-type declaration on how researchers should align policies to evaluate collaboration as well. That the governing bodies should be multidisciplinary and multi-sector, and we encourage registered reports, to use registered reports if you are familiar with this. If not, you can get in touch in the break how to register reports and communicate not only positive results, but all your results. If the methodology, if the protocols are fine, and all your research phases. Storytelling is also important for embedding collaboration in your activities. Now, this is how locked science looks like. It pushes you to develop unique skills and infrastructure that compete for opportunities around research. And this is how open science would look like: create functions between collaboration and competition, not killing competition, but create functions between collaboration and competition to deliver more efficiency and effectiveness in research. If you really want to build research machines, you continue only on the principles of competitions. And because this is what competitions have been able to deliver so far, research machines. But if you want to build research communities, bring collaboration into this equation. Research communities instead of these well-oiled research machines. This is our proposal. Here are some examples of collaborations. One of them is openness and commercialization, which is delivered from the Structural Genomics Consortium. This is a public-private partnership that supports the discovery of medicine throughout the open access research. Have you wondered why medicine, especially those that are crucial in life-saving, why medicine are so expensive? Because they embed also the negative results. When you pay for a drug, you pay for the discovery of that drug and everything that was related in that discovery process, and it was negative, not good to be used. And then you imagine that the same thing is done in academics and in academic institutions and in pharma companies, going to the same conferences, trying to measure the same thing, to identify the same target molecules, if you are familiar with bio-life sciences, and which are mainly isolating all sorts of proteins, and trying to get drugs that influence these molecules by, for example, trying to isolate them, trying to have the body to cure against them. And this is why it's so expensive. Now this consortium, it consists on academic institutions, private institutions, funders, and they have a commitment to not duplicate this research. If you want to read more, you can also read about their platforms, which is an open science platform, and they have committees that decide what molecules, for example, to define as target molecules. So far, they identify 70 new target molecules, and this is a very young consortium. This is just one of the examples. Another one is, in my opinion, Go FAIR. If you are familiar with FAIR principles in research data. They are building 3 pillars: Go Change, Go Train, and Go Build. And this is how it looks for them, the pillars and the instruments that they have. If you look on your right-hand side, one of these tools that they are building together is a discovery tool, which is delivered by open knowledge maps. This discovery tool is not working on the principles of page results displays, if you search. They're based on mapping research and helping researchers, allowing researchers open source to provide their own map and to embed their own map of discoveries. And you can't have a better example of collaboration than looking to the list of partners and contributors in open knowledge maps. And I also recommend you reading the last report about Go Change, which is a training program, the workshop which was in Frankfurt this summer. It's very recent, and I highly recommend you again to read this report to see how normally competing organizations came together to deliver collaboration. I don't know what happens. Another example is The Leiden ranking system, which is developed by the Center for Science and Technologies at Leiden, which is a very prestigious institution. It is built on Clarivate data. And one of the indexes that they are measuring is, a set of indexes is collaboration indexes. So they stopped measuring only competition in classical competition. So if you look to this collaboration, you will see, they also display the whole methodology, what they take into consideration for building these indexes, and you can have the methodology there. It's a one good example that collaboration can be measured. Another example of collaboration which I'd like to point out is the Research Institute, which is a very, very new institute. It's a collaboration between Digital Science, Wellcome Trust, University of Sheffield, and this center from Leiden, and they are trying to do meta-research activities, including to emphasize the role of collaboration. It's an independent thing than what we did at CERN in the summer, and they are also looking for partners. They have an open invitation. I invite you to read their statements and to see if you are interested to be part of it. I'm coming close, I'm rushing up a bit, but I'm, as I said, time conscious. If you want to look for measurements, of course, as I said, collaboration is not meant to kill competition. It's a good addition, in my opinion, to competition. And I know that competition is measured by indexes, and I know that many of you agree that current indexes that are measuring the success in research should be changed. One way of doing that is by looking to the proposal of Professor Bernard Matjaž from Lille, and he's proposing a matrix of metrics. And this is how his matrix of metrics is looking like. Again, I don't see the time now to go through all these metrics, but if you look to this, you will recognize that they could be naturally attached to measure collaboration, not only competition. And Professor Bernard Matjaž, it's a far forward thinker in building new indexes for research. In my opinion, without a high level of collaboration, open science is, first of all, less vibrant, is disadvantaged, and could be a reversible movement. If we have it reversed now, we'll have it for many years that come. A movement that is not coming back. I hope you found this interesting. I'm here for questions. I hope I allowed some time for questions, and I hope we get back on track with our agenda. Sorry if I speed up too much on some of my slides.
Najlepša hvala, dr. Tiberiusu, za predavanje. Gremo naprej. Naslednjo, predzadnje predavanje v tem sklopu je predavanje dr. Pavla Budronija, nosi naslov Towards the European Open Science Cloud, IOSC, Reflections on a Local Basis for Domestic Infrastructures.
Hello, good morning. My name is Paolo Budroni. I'm based in Vienna, and I thank you very much for this invitation. I'm very honored to be in this place here, so thank you very much. What I would like to do this morning is to highlight some moments of this very dynamic process which is called IOSC building process. And then highlight at the end of my speech a possibility, an opportunity to participate in this process by participating into the so-called co-creation process. So the IOSC is not a cloud made in Brussels. It's not even a cloud. It's called European Open Science Cloud, but it's not a cloud. And it's not even European, because open science is something which is worldwide. So what is it? we should not forget that the European Open Science Cloud, as a name, was decided by the Council. It was not decided by the Commission. And the Council, it is the member states. So your member state, which Slovenia, has also decided to build this cloud. It means also that concerning one of the most relevant points in this process, so the financing, this is something which will happen through the member states. The Council then decided to ask the Commission to implement this cloud. So that's why then the Commission started to work. But it's not made in Brussels. And the EOSC, it was presented to be built and be developed along 6 lines of action. So I'm representing them here. There are a lot of papers and slides showing these figures, these pictures, these graphs. I would like to stress the fact that these 6 lines of action are running through architecture, through data, through services, to access and interface, through rules and governance. And these last 2 rules and governance, they are now in the focus of all efforts done at the moment. So what we are building now in this very dynamic process is the new governance of the upcoming European Open Science Cloud. And architecture, data, and services and access will then follow. So on deciding on how this should be built, the first focus is on the governance. So again, the EOSC is not a new dedicated infrastructure or software package. This is not. It's a process. And it should give us a push towards something like a Schengen space for data and services, for example, just to make an example. And this all following the rules of FAIR. As we have heard it now by our colleague in Finland and by Tiberius, FAIR is one of the most important things. And based on that, we can ensure the interoperability of our data and our metadata and our applications with the rest of the world. So it's a global thing. So like GoFair, for example, was cited now. GoFair is acting globally. The GoFair International Foundation in Leiden, they are working globally. They have branches in Brazil, in India, in China, because of FAIR, because of South Africa, because FAIR is global. So, and this European Open Science Cloud is based on this FAIR data and FAIR services. Also, the services should be findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. And these efforts are particularly directed on data culture, research data services, federated architecture, and co-funding. So co-funding is the last part of my speech. I would like to mention this article that was published in July, not only because I'm one of the authors, but because there we tried to define and give definitions to some terms that are usually that are used in order to explain the EOSC. You find the link to this article on the PowerPoint presentation, but there are a lot of words used, and we tried to define the term, and we offered the term also through this article. Now, how does it work at the moment? At the moment, we have the EOSC Governing Board, which is a board composed by the member states and their representatives, so your country has also one representative there, and the European Commission. It's a strategic board. Then there is the executive board, which is operational. The operations takes place there. And it's accompanied by 5 working groups. These working groups are architecture, FAIR, rules of participation, landscape analysis, and sustainability, which are reflecting the 6 lines of actions I presented in the first slide. And the executive board asks the stakeholders, how do you want that the EOSC should be shaped? And you are the stakeholders. Me, I'm one of the stakeholders. And we should give answers, we should give input, and we should use this opportunity. And how, I will show you. And there is a stakeholders forum, there are some coordination structures, projects, and then working groups. And since the beginning of this year, there is also a project, an Horizon 2020 project for 2.5 years, started in January. It's the Secretariat. The EOSC Secretariat is composed by 11 institutions. One of these institutions is the Technical University of Vienna. That's one of the reasons because I'm here. I'm part of this Secretariat. And our role, for example, in Vienna is to pursue stakeholders-driven engagement. Not stakeholders engagement, but stakeholder-driven engagement. So we ask the stakeholders, how do you want the EOSC to be shaped? And our task is to address researchers. So there are some other working groups addressing other stakeholders, like industry, like the big infrastructures, and so on. The projects supporting the EOSC building are a lot. So around 50 projects are now working on the building of the EOSC. So some of them here, so the EOSC pilot project, the Freya project, OCRE, Open Air, Research Data Alliance, and INFRASTRUKTURE, the Secretariat, EOSC Hub, and so on and so on. The Secretariat is conceived in order to deliver 360 degrees support to the institutions and units working on the EOSC governance. So we have 4 focuses there. The co-creation funding opportunities, the liaison platform for open consultation, the stakeholder forum, which is organized by the Secretariat, and then the operational framework. These are the partners spread over through the whole of Europe. And we are all interconnected, so we are always reporting to the EOSC executive board, as well as to the projects, as well as to the stakeholders. And I would like to explain now with just one slide why it is important to be part of this. So, Technical University of Vienna, for example, decided through 3 organizational units, which are the Faculty of Informatics, the Center for Research Data Management, and the library, I'm based at the library, to participate to these efforts. And this is an invitation to you to do the same, to gather together, focus, gather your competencies, and then participate. Why is our library engaged in a relevant EOSC building process? Well, first of all, because our university, we say we are a university that offers technology for people. And the library is a knowledge hub, as your library is. And we want to show this. And we want also to show that we are an incubator for innovative ideas, and we engage on activities which are innovative. And therefore, we actively support the user-centric EOSC implementation. We started to contact so-called ambassadors, which are representatives of some disciplines, of their communities. We ask them to ask their communities. We started in organizing events. The next one is in January. It will be a 4-day event in Austria. With, for example, ERC grants receivers, so young researchers. We want to address the young researchers in this event, and life science, this is the second event. Then we ask for input from researchers to the EOSC. We do this, for example, through the universities' networks. So in January and in February, we will organize 4 events. And the representatives of the LERU universities, so Paul Iris and Ignazi, for example, Ignazi La Bastida, are the representatives of their universities. We are addressing them, we ask them, but also representatives of the Guild of the European Intensive Research Universities, the representatives of the CISRs, which are the technical universities, the representatives of Coimbra and the European University Association, as well as Science Europe, which are the funders. So we are contacting them, organizing workshops, asking the representatives, how do you want that the EOSC should be shaped? And this information is then gathered and filtered and sent to the executive board and to the working groups. The message we send is clear. How do we conceive the EOSC? This is our vision, the vision of Technical University of Vienna. We see the EOSC as a free point of use, free point of use. Open and seamless services for storage should be offered there. And in our vision, it should be like EduRoam, just to make an example. So when you are abroad, or when you are at home, when you are in America, when you are in Africa, or in Asia, or you are here, just connect to EduRoam, and then you are part, you can, not you are part, you are part, and you can get into the broad range of services offered by EduRoam, because it is well known, it's ubiquitous, it's transparent, it's a free point of use, it's extremely useful, it has rules of participation, has system architecture including security, it provides a specific microservice, it deals with your data as a user in a secure way, and it has a governance. So this is the EOSC. And then inside of the EOSC, there are a lot of services, fair data, and so on and so on. So our timeline is we launched the Ambassadors Program, we started the events, and we prepared also videos with the testimonials. This all is launched now in January. I would like to show you now what is happening in some other theaters. Highlighting 5 projects to whom we have a close relationship. And we also have a representative of one of these projects here in the room. This is our colleague from Slovenia, and you are in the project which is on the right side. You see in the blue color, which is this area. And you see it comes up to Armenia. Huh? And the yellow part of this map is showing some countries, and what's missing here is Brazil. So we are also collecting data about Brazil, the associated countries. Myself, I'm involved in the purple color, which is EOSC pillar. What do we do in these projects? We collect data through surveys, through qualified questionnaires, which are shared among the countries, and we are supposed to deliver the results by the end of February to the EOSC governing board and to the executive board by mixing up the results of the events I was talking about just a few minutes ago. About the co-creation process, just a few slides. I invite you to participate to the co-creation process. I brought some leaflet. What is it? It's the possibility for you and your colleagues to participate, apply for money in the case you have the idea, the winning idea, on how this EOSC could be shaped. It could be events, for example, could be studies, analysis. You can apply for a maximum of 45,000 euros. How it works is described in this, if you follow this link or this. It's very, very simple. I can say it's very simple. We have, the proposal procedure is just 4 to 5 weeks. So if you gather resources together, and you have the idea, and you take part, you can then start. It could be, for example, an event like this one, in your country or in other countries, or an analysis or a study, whatever. And The stakeholders you can address are researchers, research support, national digital infrastructures, national funding projects, research, academia, organization, policy makers at your institutions. I invite you to liaise with the liaison platform. I skipped the slides because they are just an explanation on how you can participate. And you see, I just used this slide focusing on this event because this is an example of something that could be also financed through this initiative. Register for the stakeholder forum, which will take place in just a few days in November. And I thank you very much for your attention. Thanks. These are the... Okay, so some questions? At the end,
Ja,
okay.
vprašanje bo na
Thank you
koncu
very
ali pa
much.
preko slajdov. Hvala. Tako, hvala gospodu Bodroniju. Zdaj pa nadaljujemo še na zadnjo predstavitev pred odmorom. Dr. Ignacy Labastida i Juan, Paving the Way for Adopting Fair Data in a University, bo predstavil nekaj primerov iz njegove univerze v Barceloni, tako da prosim gospoda, da nam predstavi. Hvala.
Dobro dan. I think I'm in the middle of this session and your lunch, so I'll try also to be a bit short and not to be late for the lunch. Thank you for the invitation to be back in Ljubljana. It's always a pleasure to be in Ljubljana. I've been here many times and I really love the city and the country in general. And the talk for today was meant to be centered in data, in fair data. I would like to share with you what we have done at the University of Barcelona to prepare our researchers to share data in a fair way. FAIR stands for findable, accessible, and interpretable and reusable data. Probably you heard a lot about the FAIR data. I'm not going to now to dedicate a lot of time in explaining what is fair data, but we use this slide for our researchers and our PhD students to remember where we want to go. It's our ultimate goal. The idea is we would like to have this fantastic data in this fantastic quality, but first we have to do a lot of things within the institution and with our researchers to especially change their minds. We use also this kind of slides to explain them that probably now what we have is a really close data. People do not know that you have the data and you cannot really identify. And it would be perfect if the data will be completely interoperable and understandable, not just for persons, but also for machines. But meanwhile, also, you can have your data closed, as you see on the left and the bottom. But what is very important is to have the metadata open. So that your data could be discoverable. Because probably your data cannot be shared. I have to remember here that fair doesn't mean open. Fair means good quality data that you can find, but you can say this is not open for everyone. Can be reusable under certain conditions. And that's the idea of this fair on the bottom on the left, that inform the people that you have the data. But before having this fantastic data, you have to overcome some resistance. And this is a game that I invite all of you to participate, is when you ask someone, can you share your data? And they start to say, my data is too complicated, my data is too big, nobody will understand my data. Now is where we have a problem. Because at the end, fair, what we want is that the data would be understandable. So the first question we must address our researchers is to ask them, can I understand your data? Don't just use numbers to identify, for instance, profiles in a school, and this is a real case. When I receive a spreadsheet with answers from surveys, and in one of the fields was role in the institution, it was 1, 2, or 3. I cannot understand what it means 1, 2, or 3 as a role as an institution. So afterwards, they add some information, and that was good to be understood. So with this idea, we started, especially from the library, to work towards preparing the institution for having, finally, this fantastic FAIR data. And initially, the problem we had in the library is that a lot of us, we are focused on the final step of the research cycle. We've been working a lot in open access, in publication, so we are focused many times in just the part of the publication. So we're thinking, okay, we can have our repository to allow our researchers to share the data, to publish our data. We can ask for DOIs, we can find these identifiers to identify the data. But we realized that to have this data in a repository in the final step, we have to act in all the research cycle. If we don't start from the beginning, we will fail, because at the end, the data will not be useful to be reusable. So we decided that we have to prepare the institution from the beginning. We have to prepare the researchers from the beginning, from scratch. We have to contact them at the initial point when they start research and start the discussion with them on how they are going to work with the data. And at the end, we will have this fantastic FAIR data. So probably also we have to confess that we've started all this journey because of the policies. I have to say that probably without these policies, especially the one from the European Commission, stressing the researchers to share data, to make data management plans, it will be hard to be where we are now. Before those policies, a lot of people was really aware of starting these services of helping researchers on managing research data. So probably these policies, and especially the one from the Commission, has helped a lot in all this journey, and I think it's fair to acknowledge that. So how we start? We start by supporting our researchers in doing data management plans. Again, data management plans asked by the funders. In Spain, we have also a funder, the national funder, asking for data management plans, but I have to confess that only is a recommendation. For the national projects, they ask, okay, if you want, you can have a data management plan, but there is no indication on what is that data management plan. There are no layouts, there are not any questions. So what we do mainly is support our researchers on drafting the data management plans for the European Commission, for the European projects funded by the Horizon 2020, and now in the next framework next year, or in 2 years, will be Horizon Europe. We also have a private funder in Catalonia, a bank, that now has started a policy on open science, and we help them to draft their policy and to ask our researchers for data management plans. So we work together with the funder to smooth the way, because sometimes data management plans could be hard for researchers. So we started that service, started in the library with connection also, and I think it's very important, the collaboration with other units at the university. We collaborate very close with the European Projects Office, and they send us all the researchers that are asking for support for elaborating these data management plans. We made a choice of examples based on real data management plans. The problem is that we don't know exactly if they are good or not. There is no seal saying this data management plan is good. However, we think that some of those data management plans we use are good. Maybe not all of them, but in different parts are good. So we gather all that information, and we share that with our researchers, because we think they need some examples, real examples on how to write a good data management plan. I always say to them, it's not a question of bureaucracy. It's just a question then to explain what you do. Don't think that filling a data management plan is, oh, I have to fill point 1.1, point 1.2. No. I always, when I invite them and we do that, the face-to-face meeting with the researchers, I ask them, please tell me what you do. Explain me what you do with your data. What do you expect to do with your data? Have you think about personal data? Have you think about ethical issues? And then everything appears. And once we have this conversation, then we can put all in the place that the funder, for example, asks. We also adopted the Data Management Plan Online, a tool that is useful to share, especially for working groups, to share a draft of a data management plan. We translated with and adapted with the consortia of the Catalan universities, and the tool is there available for anyone. There are a lot of adaptations all over the world because this tool that was initiated by the Scots in the Digital Curation Center, they ask all the people to please do your own tool. We don't want all the people connected in our services. So that's the reason we adapted this tool. We also did a lot of infographics, a lot of information. We have to raise awareness and explain to researchers what is the importance of data management plan, to send that message. It's not that we are asking you for another bureaucratic thing. It's because we think that thinking about what are you going to do with the data, thinking about drafting this data management plan, it will help at the end on managing all the data. And some of them afterwards, after they came and after a year or they are finishing the projects, they come to us and say, well, you know, it helped us a lot. Also, we use other infographies and other tools that we don't have to reinvent the wheel every day. So we use especially tools for raising awareness about personal data. We have a problem sometimes that researchers are not sure if personal data is involved in some of the research. So we try to also raise this awareness. We have a data protection officer, as all the institutions have, but we also need to inform researchers that they have to go there. Because sometimes, you know, well, I do a survey. Yeah, but you know, with a survey, maybe you ask for too much data. So you have to be aware. We use that for when we start, the GDPR started to be in place in May 2018, and also another good infography from the University of Rotterdam, the Erasmus University, where also they start by telling the researchers, stop, and think about which data do you really need. I think it's very important when you draft a data management plan to put all this information also in place, and we have to work together, the people who help to doing a data management plan with other legal services or the data protection officers that we have in our institutions. We also advise our researchers on licensing options. It's a very complicated issue, especially when your own institution doesn't know exactly which is the copyright situation of the data. It's a complicated topic, and sometimes the institution don't want to enter in deep in that. But I always advise any institution to discuss broadly what are you going to do with this data. It belongs to the institution, it belongs to the researcher, it belongs to the group, it belongs 50-50. It's interesting to talk and have this conversation. I do not advocate for having all the rights for the institution. I think we can find a good balance. And of course, we have an experience for more than, now it's already 15 years with Creative Commons license in our institutions. We were the host institution of Creative Commons in Spain, so we know a little bit about Creative Commons, and we can share with our researchers the different options of the typical 6 license, but also other tools, and other tools from other projects that are developed especially for data. We also did a work that is dynamic because it changes after the time, along the different years, is advising researchers where they can place the data once they want to publish. We always say the same. Probably you'll find a thematic repository, a thematic place of your community, disciplinary community, that it's perfect for you to share the data. It doesn't mean that you have to put the data in our repositories. But if you don't have that repository, maybe you can come to our institutional repository. We have that. We allow our researchers to put the data in our institutional repository. And then there are other options outside in the market. They are free, some of them, others you have to pay when you exceed an amount of data, etc. And we compare that, and we are updating this information in our website, explaining the researchers where are the options where they can publish the data, where they can share the data. We also organize many workshops like the one we are here with researchers. We did two important workshops with our research institutes. We have around 15, 16 research institutes, and we thought it would be interesting to open a nice conversation with them. We invite them to explain us what they do with the data. We have institutes from health, we have institutes from social science, we have institutes for physics, and their worries and concerns are different. Some of them are just focused on computational analysis, others are focused on personal data, others are reusing data from external databases, so it's important to have them into the conversation. That was the first workshop that we did, and the second one, we invite all the units that support researchers. So we had there the projects officer, we had the data protection officer, we had the bioethics committee, we had the committee for animal experimentation. We want to put all these people together. I think it was the first time that we did that. And also the IT people, to offer the researchers what are the different solutions, and also to explain that sometimes they have to go through different paths to get the research well done. So we explained that, and I think also it was useful for researchers to understand that what are we doing and how we are collaborating to each other. And finally, we also work together with different Catalan universities along this consortia of university service to develop a document that is called Fair per Fair, that it's feasible, affordable, and implementable requirements for a fair research data repository. This is a question that we have in our institutions, if we should build our own repository for data, or we should collaborate together to have a national repository at the Catalan level. Not just for institutions as universities, but also for research centers that are not purely from the universities. So we did that with the coordination of this consortia, and the document is based on the analysis from other countries. We look at different countries. There are countries that are far advanced from us, and it's always good to copy good experiences. We also had some technical reports, and we had 25 interviews with experts. The output of the document that is available, I just put here the link. When the slides will be available, you could check all the document. They have 25 minimal requirements, 4 best practices, and 3 recommendations. I'm just going to summarize the 3 recommendations. The 3 recommendations is that we should immediately create the repository for publication according to the FAR requirements. So for instance, we say that we will need ORCID, we need DOIs, we will need at least an amount of fixed storage, etc. These are the 25 minimal requirements, and the idea is to use open source software. Probably the choice will be Dataverse, because we've seen some experience with other consortia and in other countries that they use that. And very important, and I think that's important when you establish some of these infrastructures, is to publicize the infrastructure. We need to provide a support service. We need to organize training sessions at all levels. And finally, what we did at the University of Barcelona, something that was just approved last July, is to have a research data policy. It's not like the open access policy. The open access policy is more like a mandate. You must put a copy in a repository. Here is more like a best practice recommendation for all researchers on how they must work with research data. It's based on the LEARN model, a project funded by the Commission where Paul, Paolo, and I were working, and that the results are also available for everyone. The idea is to have an initial framework, and now we are working on the implementation of the policy. As I said, it was approved by the University Council, and we already have like 3 actions. The first action is we include a requirement for PhD students to make an initial data management plan. It's not that they have to fill a lot of papers again. It's just to raise awareness among them that when they start the PhD, they should start thinking about what I'm going to do with the data, and ask for support, and ask for facilities. And that's, I think, important, because if we start at the beginning, then we will see the results in the short term. We also are thinking about choosing an infrastructure. Of course, we are working with this collaborative initiative of all the Catalan universities, but also we are thinking that if we don't want to wait, because sometimes these initiatives can last forever, if we don't want to wait, we have to have a plan B. So probably we will launch an infrastructure for ourselves. And of course, the third action is training, training, and training. And that's the next steps, what we are doing now. We are preparing a new workshop with the institutional researcher, research institute, sorry. And we'll talk about the storage and preservation. What are the facilities we offer at the university? We are working in this data management plan layout for PhD students. Of course, they need some indications. We cannot just say, do a data management plan. We also have to think about who is going to review that data management plans. Probably we need the support of the supervisors. So probably we'll need to talk with the supervisors and discuss also this initiative. We need to adopt, finally, this institutional infrastructure. They are already, researchers are using our repository, but our repository is mainly used for publication, so probably we need something else for data. We are also learning from different best practices around the world. For instance, in the Netherlands, there is very interesting initiatives on data stewards, the support that the library, together with the faculties, are doing for research groups. And we have next week a training. One of these data stewards from the University of Delft is coming to Barcelona and is explaining to the Catalan universities how this works, and probably we will try to copy that initiative. And as I said, train, train, and train. Thank you very much.
Hvala. Torej, zdaj se nam je pa približno tisto, kar smo čakali že pol ure, se pravi pogostitev, vabljeni tukaj zraven. Če pa imate še kakšno vprašanje, pa prek slajdov še zmeri lahko.
I have some questions, and also there are some questions in Slido. Maybe it's time now that we do some, and please, if you put Slido on. First question is for Tiberius. How do you think about those issues you opened and you mentioned? And yes, we talk and sit also in Geneva. What do you think about funding of science? How funding should change that those, let's say, ideas and those implications will be applied in science research processes?
Thank you. First of all, I have a bold idea about this, but I'm not sure if I'm controversial or not. I don't think that calls for projects are the only way of funding science. I know that there are currently also other ways, but are mostly referring to a certain infrastructure, and even the eligible costs in these budgets are probably not the best fixed one. So the thing is that if you want to fund science that are not pushing that hard necessarily to the frontier of knowledge, calls for projects is fine. But if you want to find loon shooters, those that with their great ideas are able to shoot the moons and the stars, you should not oblige them to cut, to shave, to twist their projects and their ideas and the great venues of exploration. You know, funding the bizarre, the marginal, the iconoclast that is not always looking to the normal path, or is also looking to the very risky paths. This is not falling down in all sorts of call for projects funding schemes. So they need special attention, a different one. And maybe it's better what Ignacy said and also Paulo said about face-to-face meetings. And real interaction is with people, not necessarily calls for analyzing project submissions that could fund the moonshoots, those great ideas that could cure disease, stop wars, fight against famine, and turn pollution on its own trends.
Thank you.
Thanks. I'd like to add something to this. Face-to-face is one of the most important things. Concerning the national strategies, I would like to mention a new instrument that could help to maintain and secure the sustainability of projects, which is the post-agreement grant. This is very important. So you apply, you have a project, you do it till the end, and at the end, you realize that for the maintenance of the services you have providing for the project, you need more fundings. So this is one of the most popular problems. So a post-grant agreement allows you to apply again for a small sum of money, small compared to the project, in order to ensure the sustainability of it.
Thank you. I hope that some researchers from Young Academy Society are here or listen via or watch us via YouTube, because this is issue which affect also especially to young researchers.
If I may add something. Very briefly, one of the key things in having success in life is the ability to build teams. So not any kind of team, a team which is full of talents and people that are able to innovate, to think out of the normal boxes. So how do you attract these talents if you offer them 3 years contracts? How do you attract them? It's simply not working with this proposal of 3 years and so on. So you have great talents, they have their own families, their own homes, they go to the bank to get a loan and is looking, oh, you have a 3 years contract, you are rejected. We prefer the bus driver, because he has an unlimited time contract.
Okay, now if we go through those, if there is any questions from the audience.
Kakšno vprašanje?
If not, then we can just list through Slido and then close this first session. Question for Ignacy: how do researchers accept your education programs?
I have to say that we do a training for PhD students that it's not really mandatory, but it's more like advisable. They need some hours of general education, so they not focus on their PhD programs. And we started almost a year ago a program. I have to say that all the sessions are full booked, so they are really interested. And what we are worried then is how to do the same with supervisors. Because if not, the PhD students go there and the supervisors say, okay, that's very nice, but let's go to do other kind of science. But with research institutes also, we are doing a lot of work. And it's not that we are asking them, they come to us and say, please do these training sessions. And I think that's important to see that they ask us for that information. We are also working with our training office, and we try to identify these things. I remember, for instance, in January, last January, so beginning of this year, the Dean of Chemistry said, please, Ignacy, we need a section on open access. There are a lot of misconceptions, especially with Plan S that has appeared before. There was a real controversy in the chemistry society against Plan S. There were a lot of misconceptions. So the Dean said to me, I see that the young people is aware, but we have a problem with the seniors. So please come and give us a lecture. Stay there for 4 hours. The room was plenty. So there was real interest. And I always say the same to them. I'm not going to start training because I want to do training and I want to do awareness. I want you to raise that awareness among your community. And I'm able to do it at any day and any hour, but please, you have to commit to bring the people. Because if not, I can schedule a session and be myself and 2 librarians, and that's all.
Okay. Thank you. And then there are several questions for Paul and Christina. I suggest that we send these questions to them and that they answer. We will publish those answers on our website. And there is one finally questions, and before lunch, questions probably for Paul, for Mr. Bodroni, about EOSC. How does EOSC function? As a software, as a hardware, or as a standard?
So the first, again, the question, the first
word. As a software, as a hardware.
Yeah, okay, the EOSC.
Yes.
So it is not a software, it's not a working package, it's not a digital marketplace, it is not a standard. It is the way on how to work together, and it's regulated by common understandings, common rules of participation. I'll make you an example. When you are driving from the Netherlands to Ljubljana, you will use a highway with your car. So your car is passing through the whole of the infrastructure, using the same rules for everybody in the Netherlands, in Germany, in Austria, and then in Slovenia, paying in a different way, according to same rule for all. It's a cross-border service, it works. Same with the airport. So nobody is asking the carriers which kind of planes they should use or which kind of airport they should land. But when they are in the air, they all have the same rules. This is the EOSC. Okay.
Ja, zdaj pa mislim, da je že čas, da se malo prigriznemo, popijamo, tako da bi prosil, da čez 30 minut odmora, pa se potem spet dobimo tukaj, pa nadaljujemo. Hvala.